Hello and welcome to this Wisdom for Confident and Fluent English in 1 Year series in which we're working from the inside out. And this week we'll be looking at why becoming confident and proficient in English makes us suffer. In short, let's talk about change. We're hardwired to resist change for a variety of reasons, which I will speak about. But how can we become proficient in English without change? How can we move from where we are to where we want to be without change? Let's take a deeper look at change and how making some adjustments to our perceptions can make a huge difference to our experience of ourselves as confident and fluent users of English. Are you ready? Let's get started. If you haven't done so yet, click the subscribe button and invite the bell to be notified every time I upload a new video, which will be relevant to you if you're looking to transform your English and become more proficient. And if you're new here, my name is Tanya Meyer, and I'm an English as a foreign language teacher to adults, specializing in mindfulness practices to help bring clarity, understanding, and joy to your English acquisition and use. Mindfulness is the practice of stopping and looking more deeply, that is, connecting with a deeper aspect of ourselves. As usual, we're using short texts from this book, The Everyday Wisdom of Thich, Nhat, Hanh, Zen master, peace activist, writer, poet, and founder of the Plum Village tradition. And the intention is to reflect on how our understanding, attitude, and mindset towards English might be preventing us from making progress towards proficiency. We're reading these short texts together, out loud, twice. Doing this exercise of reading short texts out loud is very useful because it brings together all the elements we need for fluency in English, including practicing the rhythm and stress of English, as well as certain features of language like connected speech, that's the way in which words fit together as we speak, and natural pronunciation. All of this within the context of the most important thing, which is the meaning of the text, the message that it is communicating. There is absolutely no point in reading something and not understanding what it says. And so meaning comes first. I love these short texts because each of them teaches us something deep and valuable and beautiful and useful that we can put into practice in our day-to-day life. So let's read the text together. And after that, I'll share my reflections and I'll invite you to do the same. Remember that this first time we're simply reading in order to understand what the message is. Number 7, why we suffer. When we look deeply at the nature of things, we see that in fact everything is impermanent. Nothing exists as a permanent entity. Everything changes. It is said that we cannot step into the same river twice. If we look for a single permanent entity in a river, we will not find it. The same is true of our physical body. There is no such thing as a self, no absolute permanent entity to be found in the element we call body. In our ignorance, we believe that there is a permanent entity in us, and our pain and suffering manifest on the basis of that ignorance. If we touch deeply the non-self nature in us, we can get out of that suffering. Wow, such an important and helpful paragraph. Okay, so now let's read it again. But now we're going to pay attention to how we're putting words together and to any vocabulary we don't understand or any challenges we face with pronunciation. Now, you know that you have some kind of issue with the delivery of the text if at any moment you are not reading at the same pace as I am, because as you can see, I'm reading slowly, or if at any moment you get stuck. So make note of that place where you get stuck so that you can come back to it later and investigate. What is it in that place that got you stuck? Is it because of the way that you need to pronounce this word, or is it because it's joining another word, or where is it that you're getting stuck? And once you become aware of that, then try again. So here we go with the second reading. Why we suffer. When we look deeply at the nature of things, we see that in fact everything is impermanent. Nothing exists as a permanent entity. Everything changes. It is said that we cannot step into the same river twice. If we look for a single permanent entity in a river, we will not find it. The same is true of our physical body. There is no such thing as a self. No absolute permanent entity to be found in the element we call body. In our ignorance, we believe that there is a permanent entity in us, and our pain and suffering manifest on the basis of that ignorance. If we touch deeply the non-self nature in us, we can get out of that suffering. Okay, so what is your understanding of this week's text? Practice your writing skills by posting a comment below. Writing your ideas in English is a great way of cultivating clarity of thought. And sharing them here on YouTube, which is a public platform, requires great courage. Okay, so let's take a look at what message this text contains for us right now first, shall we? It's a fact that although we know that things change, intellectually we know that things change, there's something within us. There's an inner resistance to anything changing and a very strong desire for things to remain the same, especially if things are going well for us. I recently came across this quote on a website. It says, "Not all change leads to improvement, but all improvement requires change." So let me just share a little bit about my experience with change, especially about a decade ago when I started working at the British Council, which is an organization where there is a lot of change going on all the time. So I remember starting there, being very excited to start working there after a long period of stagnation where nothing much was happening in terms of professional development or personal growth. I had been very busy, but it hadn't led to anything really happening. And then suddenly I find myself in this very well-oiled machine, which is the British Council, where every 8 weeks teachers are expected to teach 5 new groups of people with different materials at different levels, and things are changing all the time. It doesn't seem like a lot right now, but trust me, when you're in that situation where you're responsible for the learning of different groups of people who have different needs, are at different levels, using different books, and this changes every 8 weeks, that's every 2 months, and you do this for about 10 years, you realize the degree to which you have become used to so many changes and even welcome these changes, even look forward to things changing rather than resisting change the way we normally do. And so it might be your case that things don't change so drastically and so quickly. Prior to working at that organization, when I was younger, I worked in the shipping industry where the opposite is true, where you can see the ship that's coming into port 2 days before it arrives. And everything is very slow in the shipping industry because there's a lot of communication that needs to take place between people who are in different countries. Things are very large and bulky. There's a lot of people involved in every operation. And so that industry is very slow. But even there, change is most definitely taking place. Nowadays, for example, the shipping industry is very much aware of the environment and its impact on the ocean, and is taking measures to reduce the damage caused by ships crossing the oceans. Either way, whether you are in a situation where change is slow or in a situation where there's change every day, the fact is that change is there. And if we bring our awareness to change in our everyday life, we can see that although we might not like it, everything is possible because things change. If things never changed, then nothing would be possible. And so we can reframe our understanding of change and befriend it, make it something that we appreciate. Let's look briefly at some of the reasons why we resist change, and then we'll look at some of the ways in which we can shift our views in favor of a more realistic perspective. Okay, so we resist change first and foremost because we have neurological needs. For example, we feel safe when there's certainty. And so creating a plan, for example, can help our brain feel more certain and less uncertain. Uncertainty generates much anxiety and stress for our brain, as we've seen over these last few years. Now, another neurological need is the need to deliberate, that is, to have time to think about things. Or seen from another perspective, our neurological needs are to have sufficient time for anything that's planted, any ideas that are planted to ripen and grow. So that is a neurological need, that change should take time and be slow. And in this deliberation process, we can also come to an understanding of the benefits that will arise from the change that is being planned. So you can also deliberate on how the changes that you make to your English, on how becoming more confident and fluent will result in benefits for you, and focus on that. Another neurological need that we have is the need for routine. We are creatures of habit. And so instead of changing our routine the way I mentioned, that is the case in certain organizations every 8 weeks and drastically, the suggestion is to make small changes to your routine that don't interfere too much with the overall routine, because small changes, if acted upon regularly, can have a much greater long-term impact than a big change that is only temporary. We also have psychological needs, and one of them is the need for self-esteem. So, for example, if changing is something we doubt that we're able to do, will I be able to become a confident and fluent user of English? If we have any doubt about our ability to become more confident and proficient in English, then we will resist becoming that. And so a good way of counteracting this self-doubt is by focusing on past achievements. So if I was able to do this and that, then becoming more proficient in English is something I can do as well. We also have social needs, the need to belong, be respected and accepted as we are by the people around us. What will others think when I become a fluent user of English? So that's something that might also be preventing us from changing, this fear of abandoning or betraying the circles that we belong to. So here's a suggestion. From the moment you wake up every day, notice the changes from the previous day. Notice your state of mind and the thoughts you have. What emotions are you feeling? Is your morning routine conducive to openness and change? Notice the weather, for example, that's constantly changing, the sounds you hear. Start writing a journal about the progress you make so that you can look back and see how much things have changed since you wrote. Developing an open attitude to change not only makes sense, but also helps us to be more accepting of the reality and the true nature of things, which is impermanence. Because things change whether we want them to or not. And so things can change and we can be tense and anxious and fearful, or things can change and we can be open and joyful and effective in whatever we do, including becoming more proficient in English. So if you're ready to bring a deep and measurable change to your English by following a clear roadmap that supports you, check out the link in the description box about my ongoing English training program. And remember to download your very own copy of my free guide, How to Revolutionize Your English, Success in 8 Steps, which is filled with tips and suggestions for you to implement straight away. Start making those small changes and adjustments that long term are going to lead to much more confident, grounded, and fluent English. And if you want to watch the other videos in this series, I'll leave a playlist here for you to watch, or you can click here or look for a link in the description box below. And I'll see you in the next one. Remember to invite the bell to be notified when I upload it. I'll see you then. Take very good care. Bye for now.